You should. Tomorrow morning.
Dynamic meditation, and then we'd go through the 2 days, and that's what we did. So that was the beginning of it. And since then, it's just blossomed and became very involved in breathwork here, and then also quite involved with the international body, setting up the International Breathwork Association. I was part on the committee that first set the first one of those up. So that's been my association with breathwork, just to give you a little bit of my background. And as part of my primal work, of course, I went very quickly into the womb space during those years of doing primal therapy, and found myself in my sessions back in my mother's womb. My birth and the impact of my birth, came to really understand the impact of my birth. My mother went into labour with me, not knowing how I was going to get out. So that's a pretty good imprint for a childbirth educator, which I then became. Because if she didn't know, someone had to know. It had to be me. And it was, I took my teaching skills from my teaching skills from school teaching into childbirth education, and then into the wider range of things I taught. Tantra courses, breathwork courses, and probably my great passion that I do still a lot of is I love the family constellation work, and also the G. Houston work of trance, working in trance and taking people through deep psychological processes via trance. So, but I found out how important breathwork was. I found the importance of the birth process, and then having my first child really, really radicalised me, when it turned out to be just a total train wreck, totally opposite to everything I tried to make to what happened. It was a total train wreck. And I just came out of that with this big question, why? And so I would like to be able to say that things are a lot different for women today than they were 44 years ago, but I'm sorry, they're not. They're worse. There are more options for us, and some women do take those. Home birth 44 years ago wasn't talked about. 4 years later I had my daughter at home. That was a totally different experience. So that radicalised me the other way, having this amazing orgasmic birth that no one had ever talked about, and I couldn't stop talking about afterwards because it's so incredible. And that was probably, that galvanised me in a way to, like, I've just got this part of me right down my core, that I really want that for everyone to have the opportunity for that, and to give women the opportunity and the supports and the information that they need to birth our babies. And all the work that we did at the Centre for Human Transformation was to work with couples to heal their own deep stories, and to become as clear as possible as channels for the new generation coming through. So that's how, that was the ultimate thing of it. So there was a beautiful time. We had lovely births in our little temple in the middle of the bush out there, and the community living together, and beautiful water births. And I was very involved with the first water birth in Australia, in a dear little temple that the amazing father built in the middle of suburbia of South Melbourne. Many, many years ago. And so things like water birth, and then eventually out of my work, Lotus Birth. So Lotus Birth is the leaving of the umbilical cord intact. Right, and that came out of one of my sessions. That came out of one of my primal therapy sessions, where I re-experienced having my cord cut. And there, like, why? I gave this big why. I had no, like, it made no sense to the being that I am. Why that? And it was so traumatic and hurt so much, and the panic and the pain of having the umbilical cord cut straight away. So we better start on good. Now this is where I'm not trained this sort of thing.
Just forward and back.
Thanks, that's forward.
That's forward.
Lovely. So Lotus Birth. This is the second edition of Lotus Birth. The first edition was released in 2000, and this was released in 2011, the second edition. It's been translated into Italian, Greek, no, not Greek, Italian, Czech and Polish. And it's a delightful reading.
Try
Over there.
Oh, it's turned on.
Yes, it turned on.
Turn me on, darling. Turn me
Only it was a simple switch.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hey!
Okay, so let's go through it. Now what I'll do, I would really love to take you through the placental healing process. So I'll go through this quite quickly and not get diverted because
Thank
I
you.
do that. It's not so Lotus Birth is the practice of leaving the umbilical cord uncut so the baby remains attached to the placenta until the cord naturally separates from the navel, as a cut cord normally does. If you usually baby's got a stump, right? And how long does that stump usually last?
10 days and more.
Yeah, 10 to a
Weeks
couple of weeks.
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Lotus Birth babies usually let go of their cord in about day 4, so it doesn't take nearly as long as a stump cord. And we don't create a site for infection. There's no site for infection. That's why she cut it. Michelle O'Donnell, the wonderful obstetrician, says that sepsis would be reduced greatly in third world countries where it's very common. The cord was left alone, which is an interesting. Right. So our beginnings are the ova and the sperm. And one of the amazing things in my primal therapy days was just becoming an ova and just having this amazing thing and then being a sperm. My God, they've got lots of energy. Sperm there had lots of energy. But from the ova and the sperm, which carries our parents' genetic material, the baby creates the baby, the placenta, the umbilical cord, the amniotic fluid, and the membranes. They belong to the baby. It's not mother's waters. No. It's not mother's placenta. No. It's not her membranes. No. They are part of the baby's system. They're part of the baby's integrity, and the baby knows what to do with those. And at any point that we interrupt the baby's process and have outside forces coming into this, we compromise the integrity of the organism. One of the great things Lotus Birth does is just honours totally the integrity of the organism. And we see, demonstrated to us, how perfect we are. Our divine design is amazing, totally amazing. And these babies come through so full of confidence, self-confident. It's just an organic reality, right? They don't doubt themselves. You don't bother trying to sway them once they know. You know, they're quite clear about themselves. Would you like to be like that? Yes. So while the baby is in utero, the blood supply to the lungs, liver and guts is diverted or reduced to the functions of the organs that are performed by the placenta. So the placenta is our friend, it's our organ, it's ours. And we have a relationship, it works hard for us. It advocates between the mother system and our system. It lets the mother system know what we need. One of the ways that where this is, I'd just like to mention this, is that towards the end of pregnancy, quite often just as all finishing touches have been put up onto the baby's system will require just a bit extra, and elevated blood pressure towards the end of pregnancy is normal. And that's important to know. I say that because that's what brought me undone. I told people my blood pressure was too high, and then I was put in induced and all sorts of stuff. It was wrong. And when we're being told it, it's wrong. So a pregnant woman has a different health system than a normal person. So with the baby's first breath, the diverting blood vessels close, causing the organs to become fully perfused with the blood for the first time. When the baby is born, 30 to 50% of its total blood volume is still in the placenta. We're only born with 2/3 of our total blood supply in our bodies, because we've still got this other organ, and it's still working for us. It's performing its job. It's helping us. We're not alone. Our placenta is there working for us, and it's such a loving relationship. The placenta is an organ of love, I promise you. It's absolutely beautiful. And on that first breath, as the baby And the first breath is called the inspiration. So if we want to have an inspired life, we need to provide the best possible environment for the baby to take its first breath. And we are mammals, remember, we are mammals. And it's the denial of our basic mammalian needs that causes so much of the problems that we are actually dealing with in the rest of our lives. We are mammals. And that part of the brain that's mammalian is an important part of the brain. But it's been highly compromised now for generations. We've highly compromised our mammalian nature. In a culture that's got this judgment about animal nature and not being animal. Animals are beautiful. They're far kinder than humans. They haven't destroyed the planet like humans have, pretending not to be animals. So that's just that is the baby systems there. So your umbilical cord, you had an umbilical cord, and it comprised of 3 blood vessels. There were 2 umbilical arteries that carry the deoxygenated blood to the placenta, and the placenta clears all that out, and the single umbilical vein that returns oxygen-rich blood to the baby's body from the mother. And so it's a letting go and a receiving. So this letting go and receiving in is the process that goes through the umbilical cord. There is no such thing as cord blood. Doesn't exist. The cord is simply the vehicle for letting the blood go from the placenta to the baby. No such thing as cord blood. If there's blood in the cord, it's because it's been cut too soon. No such thing as cord blood. And yet we have a whole industry, a whole vampire industry, where parents are paying money to have cord blood stored with no guarantee that it will be of any benefit actually. There's no guarantee. And they're supposed to be their babies. Now here is a baby with his placenta.
It's the most fascinating looking thing I have ever seen.
Yeah.
My grandsons have studied it like crazy. It's amazing.
It is amazing, absolutely. I'm so into placentas.
Looks like an asteroid.
Oh, there's fabulous stuff online. Go online. Join me on my Facebook page, Rachana, Shivam-Evans. We'll put lots of stuff up about placentas at different times. Yeah, that's the. So you had a placenta. You had one. So Lotus Birth, by leaving this baby with this placenta until it comes away naturally at the navel in the days after birth, recognises and respects the integrity of the whole biological system. And being present in those days during a Lotus Birth happening changes people. It really is a transformative experience for everyone, just to watch the process, be present in the process. So a little bit of the history behind it was, it took me 7 years from when I had my experience in primal therapy. It took 7 years what I learned there is how long it takes to get a new thought. So it took 7 years from having this, my experience, to getting to the point where I'm considering, what if we didn't cut the cord at all? It's interesting, isn't it? It took that long. And during that time, what did I do? Well, I ran workshops with people. I had talking to women about the 3rd stage of labour. And what that uncovered was just the level of pain and trauma and distress that women were carrying about what actually happened to them after their babies were born. Mm-hmm. Often babies that were totally born at the birth had gone all right, then placental retained placentas and I nearly said retarded. Retained placentas, manual removal of placentas. The women, once they start to talk about it, it's huge, absolutely huge. Women were awfully traumatised by how they were treated afterwards. And of course, that, I'll say that now. What happens is at the point after we conceive in our mother's fallopian tube, we conceive in the fallopian tube and then we sort of roll down, we're sort of whooshed along down and we tumble down into the womb, which is a massive space as far as we're concerned, that's why we're so small. And then we implant. Now many conceptions occur that never get to that point of implantation. And that plantation requires, it's a two-way contract. The contract starts where the baby connects to the mother and the mother accepts the pregnancy. That's the beginning, that's a really important stage of the mother-child relationship. And at birth, then, that's between then when the mother lets go and the baby casts off. And for some mothers, it takes a while after a baby's born to let go of that placenta. And it's plenty of time. The baby's born, everything's okay. There is plenty of time. And the third stage of labour can often be a very deeply healing time. There can be deep emotions, holdings on from the past, all sorts of things can arise in that time. And it's really beautiful for the mother to have the opportunity to be held in that space. And it's incredible how, once she finds the feeling that's there, placentas that have been held inside for a long time just come away. There's one story, I was called into a birth where it was a home birth. The mother had had the baby about 5 hours previously. The placenta was still inside. It was her second home birth. And I knew her fairly well. And none of you were saying so, they called me in. So I just said, well, what's happening? Where's it? So you go to one of the bodies, you know about the 5 bodies. So what's the prevailing thought? She said, I keep thinking about Siamese twins. And I said, oh, do you? So we had a little chat about Siamese twins. What would be a good thing about the Siamese twins? And what would be not very good about it? You can imagine that sort of conversation. And then after that conversation, it just come up. Now that was a metaphor, you see. It didn't what the exact thing was. It didn't matter. But it was, she just needed that time. And then everything, the baby had a Lotus Birth, it was fine. So it was 7 years research in the childbirth education field, frontal therapy, and I started watching babies when their responses, because I was attending quite a few home births at that time, and I started to watch the babies. At that time in childbirth we were doing mother-led birthing practices, so we what the mother wanted, what the mother wanted, what the mother wanted. And that was changing things dramatically, of course, from what doctors and the midwife thought should happen. And so the mothers were teaching us lots of things. But so I started to watch the baby when the cord was cut. That was revealing. Babies would, they would start to cry. That was the first thing I noticed. The babies were totally happy and in mum's arms. The cord would be cut and the baby would cry. Cry, a good half hour, really cry. And so then we thought, well, we'd better ask the baby. Good, baby, to ask the mother, we'll ask the baby. So we got to the point there where we'd say to the baby, we're thinking of cutting cord. Because when we'd wait for the mother, it would usually be about an hour and a half afterwards. And usually she would say, they'd sat there for an hour and a half and the placenta's still there. And she's a bit uncomfortable, so she started to move. And she would usually, the cord, will we cut it? So she never said, let's cut it. There was always a question. And we couldn't think of anything else. I said it took 7 years to think the thought. Often in those little workshops I've had with the women, every now and again someone would say, what if we didn't cut it? I don't know, but we just get popped in every now and again.